we're going to ask our listeners to click on a link and go to a form and just vote on which one of these they like the best. Welcome to Calvary Conversations. I am Sean LePage, the chairman of the Ministry Studies Department at Calvary University, and I am going to host this conversation today with my fellow Calvary Conversations hosts. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Good to have you here. So, Josh Paxton, director of the Burnham Center for Global Engagement and intercultural studies professor, now Dr. Joshua Paxton, and then Dr. Mike Dodds in the Ministry Studies Department and in the Calvary University Seminary, and the director of CU Press. Perhaps a lot of people don't even realize that Calvary University, for the last couple of years, right? You've been going for a couple of years, publishing books and other and a journal and other things. So Mike is in charge of that, and Tim Hange from the Calvary University English Department, and still the director of TESOL, correct?
Right. Yep.
TESOL, which I never remember what TESOL stands for.
Teaching English to speakers of other languages.
Teaching English.
I train I train people to teach English to English as second language students.
Excellent. Sounds like a Calvary Conversations
topic. Yeah, it does. You say that.
Yes.
But today we are, how was that for a good transition? Today we are going to be discussing kind of a fundamental thing for us. So just a little history on Calvary Conversations. We started this vlog and podcast. You can watch us or you can just listen to us. And those links are available in various places. But we started this in the midst of the COVID shutdowns. We were planning our annual Christian Leaders Conference, and we decided instead to do it online and to start this podcast. And so it was actually kind of a rushed thing, and so we didn't really spend a ton of time really digging into what do we really want our mission and purpose to be. At that time, we had been talking about a theme of Christian leaders engaging with culture and doing cross-cultural ministry and that kind of thing. And so that was where we started. That's where most of our conversations were aimed in the beginning. And so as we crossed the 1 year mark back in, I want to say it's actually been a couple of months since we crossed the 1 year mark. But we began to talk about the need to just really clarify our mission and purpose for this program moving forward. And so that's what we want to talk about today, because what we want is for our listeners to participate in this conversation. So we've already had a couple of conversations ourselves about what we want the mission and purpose to be, but we decided that we wanted to pitch it out to our listeners to participate. Now I don't know what that sounds like, but it's actually pretty substantive, because we believe that Calvary University has not just the four of us, but just overall, we have a lot of people who can really contribute to the important conversations of our day. And so we want this mission statement and therefore our purpose for doing this podcast to really match up with what we believe is are the most important conversations of our time, and what Calvary we believe Calvary how Calvary can contribute to those conversations. So hopefully that makes some sense. What we're planning to do here basically is to talk about some of the ideas that we've had, And then we're going to invite you, we're going to give you a link to a poll, to a form that you can go to. There are only 4 options, and we also have I guess a 5th option for you to offer your own ideas about a mission statement, and then also just ideas regarding topics for us to discuss. And so we feel like this conversation is actually a really good conversation for us to have, just in relation to what we want to accomplish, even beyond just a podcast, but as Christians in culture. All right, so you guys add to or correct or refine what I just said about this conversation.
Well,
Josh,
I think one of the
what you
reasons
going-
we've I think one of the reasons we've decided to keep this format is that we discovered we enjoy not being in the same room. So
True.
this keeps us
Be careful with that one.
away from each other's throats. So,
Yeah, right.
no,
Yeah,
not really.
some of us enjoyed the isolation of
except
COVID.
2 of us are like right across the hall from each other here.
Yeah.
But what else would you guys add to what I just said about the importance of the conversation?
Josh,
Josh,
Sean, like everything you just, everything you just said was great. You're absolutely right. We started this kind of hypothesizing, what is it that our listeners might want to hear? And, Calvary Conversations is intended to be a ministry to our audience. It's not just because we like getting together and talking to one another and, staring at our faces on a screen or anything like that. But at any rate, it's for us to be a ministry to our audience, whether that's Calvary's constituency or beyond that. And so it's one of the things I teach students in evangelism, spiritual life. It's my primo. You learn nothing about evangelism from me. This is the thing I want you to learn the most. Listen first. That at any time you're engaging in a conversation with somebody, if you're sharing the gospel, if you're speaking cross-culturally, whatever it is, right? We need to listen. And I think this is a great opportunity for us as the hosts of this video cast podcast to listen to those who have been watching it. What is it? How is it that you would like us to bless you with this? What can we bring to bear that you would be interested in hearing about?
good.
I like the fact that we've gone with Calvary Conversations. This isn't, and that we've actually held to conversations. I don't think that, every now and then one of us will get up on a soapbox for a few minutes, but for the most part, these are conversations. And I think the 4 of us are very comfortable with, I wouldn't say, I don't feel like we challenge each other per se, but we look at a topic and we say, no, wait a minute, what about this? Or what about that? And I think a lot of the issues in our world that we face right now require not just, hearing one opinion, but have us as a group of believers gathering around that topic and discussing it and analyzing it together and thinking about how the scriptures and God's revelation applies to these things, because it's not always cut and dry. It's not always clear. It's not always, a 30-minute TV show with easy answers at the end, or a Sunday school lesson that ties up neatly. So I think we've had that ethos, and I think that has served us well. And I hope that that's what draws people here. It's one of the things is that we're willing to have honest conversations about and even challenge things and even leave things on the table and say, well, we don't know, but we're closer to understanding because of the conversation. So
Good. Mike, what do you have?
Well, when you started out, Sean, and you gave a little bit of history, I thought back through the different topics we had for what started out first as pastoral leadership conferences that we did once a year in the spring. And then it evolved with the name to leadership because we wanted to broaden it out just from pastors. But I think of the topics, we did youth ministry and discipleship and preaching and apologetics and leadership And so we began our conversations focusing on leaders. I remember our first thought, and this is what I ran with at the beginning, having conversations with significant leaders doing significant ministries. And in our minds were significant ministries that our audience would want to hear about, be challenged about, thinking about. And so I think back through some of the conversations I've had and was pleasantly encouraged when I heard back from one of those people that I interviewed that he had been contacted about his ministry. All right, so that was one of the connections we wanted to have. And I know, Tim, you at the beginning interviewed a guy that had written a book. That's part of it, that we wanted to expose our audience to good thoughts or deep thinkers or people that would challenge their thinking, like you were just saying there, Tim. And I think that I've heard us all saying that's what we significantly want to continue doing. But as you were talking, Sean, we want to hit that listener's interest. What's of interest to you, our listener? And so that's really going to be a big boon for us. That's why we're doing this today. We want to have a conversation with you, like we've already said. So are the kinds of people that we're interviewing, kinds of ministries, what kinds would you be interested in? So there's a part of the feedback we're soliciting from you all.
Very good. I one of the things that I believe strongly in, that I teach regularly, is that the Holy Spirit actually teaches us in community. That he teaches us individually as we interact with the Word of God. But what is often lost in individualistic America is that he also teaches us, and I think perhaps most effectively, he teaches us in and through community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the reasons why we chose the word conversations, is not because we just want to talk and never come to any conclusions, but because we believe that there's a lot of spiritual health and strength in discussing things in community and hearing other believers who've been walking with the Lord for many years and so forth. So let me just throw out these 4 mission statement possibilities that we developed, and then I'd like you guys to talk about their similarities and their differences. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one is, and these are in no particular order. These are in random order. So we won't tell you which ones are our favorites yet. But first of all is encouraging conversation about life from the biblical worldview. That's the first one. The second one is encouraging conversations about how the biblical worldview informs Christian life and leadership. The third one is encouraging conversations about anything and everything from the biblical worldview. And then finally, conversations about how the biblical worldview informs our lives and leadership. Okay, Tim, tell us about what you see are the strengths and the weaknesses of some of these. What are the commonalities? What do you like? What do you don't like?
Okay.
Glad he's picking on you first.
So, in a moment of complete transparency to our audience, one of the things that experts say in this podcasting profession is that you should really narrow your focus as much as possible to a particular niche, they say, right?
Right. Right.
Some people say niche, but I think it's supposed to be niche anyway, to a particular niche. And that's one of the things we have struggled with, is we have looked through these and try to create a mission statement. So the encouraging conversations about anything and everything, right? If you stop there, that feels too broad, right? What is this podcast really about then, right? But then you take that next phrase, from the biblical worldview, and you realize what this podcast is about, what our heart is, and we're getting there. We're figuring out how to articulate this. But what our heart is ultimately is that we want people to understand that the biblical worldview does not sit apart from our daily lives, that it is deeply incorporated already into our daily lives. I don't even like the term biblical integration. We talk about how do we integrate the Bible and biblical truth into our daily lives? It's silly to me because it already is, right? You just need to learn how to see it. And so that is, to me, the thing I like about the vibe of all of these actually mention biblical worldview. That's not just thrown in there to make it sound good. That is the essence of how we're thinking. The biblical worldview should inform everything from what music we sing in church to what I watch on my TV at home, or the kinds of conversations I have with my neighbors, or even how I purchase things, right? All of that should be informed by the biblical worldview. And so the anything and everything is at once challenging to me, but with that prepositional phrase added, it also expresses really our heart. So it's just a thought about that one. That one wasn't one I proposed, but that's, some thoughts on that.
Mike, what do you think?
That's the one I proposed. Which let me back up a little bit. I'm a process person, so I was hearing everybody talk through the day, and it seemed like we were moving in that direction. Because let me back up to one that I heard us talking about the other day. We want to conduct engaging conversations on Christian involvement in the culture, theology, education, leadership. So we had this grab bag of different topics that we've dealt with, and then the conversation, we brought in the words, like you're saying, Tim, biblical worldview. And I instantly go, duh, that is that core defining element to all those things that we're talking about, and just a given, like you're saying there, Tim. And so that's where I felt, well, really, we want to talk about any issue in life. We aren't going to narrow it down. Tim, I heard in our discussion, we want to focus. That was the beginning. We focused on leaders, but then we said, well, people might take the word leadership just in a professional way, a full-time paid way. And that's not what we were focusing on. We were focusing on God's people being servants and leading in that broad sense anywhere in the world. So we have a specific audience. We have, when we think in mind, Christians that want to serve. And then that discussion of where are they serving? Well, in a lot of places. So I hope there's no limit. And that's what I liked about anything and everything. I threw that one on the table because it sounded like we were saying we're not going to limit the subjects we talk about, but we're going to make sure we or the person we're interviewing make sure we touch on the biblical worldview toward that topic. Because some of the topics we're going to touch on, we go, well, I hope I'm never involved in that subject because it's sinful. But Scripture talks about sin, and we need to help people that could get caught in sin, or we need to respond to a culture about anything and everything with the biblical Christ-honoring worldview. So here's where we're coming back to words. What would say the best to our audience about what we're about?
Good. Josh.
Good. We've given you 4 options to choose from here, but as we had this conversation, I think we probably came up with 30 to 40 maybe different options, trying to narrow it down and decide what is it that Calvary Conversations is really about. And I liked one of the words that Tim used earlier, which was perspective. And there's actually several authors out there who, in talking about worldview, they actually use the term meaning perspective. And so it's a perspective on how we find meaning in life and reality, and then how we live according to that meaning. And perspective is such an important word. If you even just think about some of the issues that have been going on in the past couple of years, police shootings and race issues, COVID, critical race theory, just so many things. And oftentimes what lies at the heart of a lot of those issues is a disagreement about the perspective we bring to the table in the issue. And so it's to, I'm pretty sure I'm quoting somebody when I say this, but the issue is not the issue. The real issue is the perspective we're bringing to the issue and how we're understanding and interpreting it, our framework, our background as we get into that. And so really in all of these, it's that key piece of the biblical worldview. And I also liked what Tim mentioned about it's not integrating, right? The biblical scripture is our foundation. We don't start with life and then try to figure out how the Bible fits into life. We start with the Bible and then we try to figure out, all right, how does my life fit what scripture has to say, what God has to say about the nature of reality and what is truth. And so that's, really the importance of what we're trying to do here with these conversations is having them and bringing to light, the foundational truth of what does God say about how we are to live, how we are to be and belong in community, and what we're becoming in that environment as well.
That's good, Josh. And I actually I love the word perspective as well. I use it a lot. But this phrase or this terminology, the biblical worldview, I actually it's actually in kind of the circles that we or the waters that we swim in, the biblical worldview is a constant a source of conversation. And so and having spent a lot of time in youth ministry and college ministry and other things, I feel like the biblical worldview, that phrase, that term has been thrown out there a lot. And I found myself really feeling that some of my students didn't really grasp the significance of it. So I actually started saying, asking, what does that mean? What are we talking about? And what we are talking about is reality. The biblical worldview is God's explanation of reality, and so that's why I think we should be ready and willing to have conversations about anything and everything, because we're talking about reality. So my time in youth ministry, whenever I would open it up to questions, sometimes we would just do that, whatever questions. It always surprised me. I always thought, kids would want to talk about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or some of the big topics that we always focus on in youth ministry. But often they would bring up stuff that, it would just surprise me. But it was important to them, gaming or just the stuff that they did with their time or whatever. And we should be able to filter all of that through the biblical worldview, because we're talking about reality. And so we're really in agreement on this idea of focusing our conversations on the biblical worldview, right?
Yeah, Sean,
Yes.
you said something at one of our meetings. At the end of the meeting, you said, "What's the action step? What's the so what?" A pastor preaches a sermon, and the people listening there are thinking, "So what?
Right.
Where's the life?"
Right.
One of the terms that we've used, and I had anything and everything, but then somebody else talked about, so I revised it with life's issues. We're going to have conversation about life's issues. That's what you're touching on, Sean, there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're almost out of time. And yet I really, Sean, that aspect of a understanding of reality is so important. What is really real? What actually corresponds to existence? my wife has been taking some classes, and she's been working on a paper on abortion, and your view of reality really affects your view of abortion, your understanding of when life begins. And so that's just one of those issues out there where how you understand what the basis of reality is going to determine your outcome, your position on that particular issue.
Right.
Yeah, precisely. And the Bible it provides us with God's perspective, God's explanation of reality, and so that literally should be able to inform us on any topic that anybody brings up. And so I lean towards the anything and everything from the biblical worldview, and we also kind of hit on this idea of encouraging conversation. That's one of the things we really want to do. We want to encourage you, our listeners, to have conversations with people, and we also want to have encouraging conversations here that encourage you as our listeners to not only engage in conversation, but also just to give you the encouragement that the biblical worldview is the correct worldview. It answers man's biggest questions better than any other worldview, and that's always when I began to really embrace that idea, it's been incredibly encouraging to me. So you guys have anything to add here? We're going to ask our listeners to click on a link and go to a form and just vote on which one of these they like the best. And we also want to hear from you on the topics that you'd like us to address from a biblical worldview. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd encourage our listeners, if you are, hearing this and thinking, well, maybe I'll do that, it would be such a blessing to us, and maybe take that anything and everything vibe and think, okay, no topic is too mundane or off limits or separated from, and it's, again, our ethos is that our worldview is not separated from any sphere of life. The
Right.
Christian worldview, the biblical worldview, is not separated from any sphere of life. Hit us with those questions, and don't be don't be concerned about, oh, does this sound spiritual enough or interesting enough to cover on a podcast. It either will be interesting or it won't, and we could change our mission to Calvary Conversations, helping people sleep better. I'm joking, but
Great idea.
Maybe we should,
no, but seriously, please give us your input. We really crave that.
Yeah,
Maybe
this is
Go ahead, Jeff.
this is us not wanting to be talking heads, right? We're not wanting to just feed you a bunch of information according to what we think is important. We would actually like to hear what's important to you. What would you like to have brought to bear against a biblical worldview? And at the same time, we're not claiming to be the Bible answer people, right? But we're hoping to just engage with all of you in an ongoing conversation about how does the biblical worldview inform our lives.
Yeah. And maybe we need to put a clarification that if we go with anything and everything or whatever, there might be some topics that someone would want to ask and need an answer to, but perhaps because of the venue that we're using with the audience, our response to them would be, boy, you need to have a conversation, but on a personal level. So
Yeah.
I want to reassure our audience, we're not going to get shocked. It's not, boy, we're going to talk about something and everybody else wants to maybe turn it off because they don't want to listen. It's whatever rating. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to definitely talk to the biblical worldview with our audience in view. And that's that general Christian audience. But please have those conversations that you need about anything and everything from a biblical worldview.
Yeah, I'll just add one final thing. The link is going to take you to a Google form. It's completely anonymous. We will not know who you are. And so by all means, click that, let us know your thoughts, and we'd love to hear from you.
Good. Thanks for mentioning that, Josh. And Mike, I totally agree. Nothing's off limits. You know, if it's important to you, then it will be important to us, and we will want to address it. So again, look for the link in the email or in the description of the video or the podcast. And we really challenge you to give us that feedback. It would be so helpful to us as we move forward. So thank you, gentlemen, for your ministry in and through Calvary University, as well as Calvary Conversations. Thanks for your time today. And listeners, we thank you for listening and for the feedback you have given us, and for the participation that you have shown in the conversations that we've done over the past year. We so appreciate that and look forward to the days ahead. So thanks for joining us today. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Calvary Conversations, a service of Calvary University in Kansas City, Missouri. We invite you to participate in the conversation by contacting us through the Calvary University website, calvary.edu, or by calling us at 816-322-0110. Join us again next week for another Calvary Conversation.